Nextcloud. Now I got to remember to turn it off too. So thanks you guys all for coming. I'm going to share my screen here.
Alice, thank you very much for doing this.
Oh no, it's the least I can do because it's a new system and you guys need to, it's just as well, it's as important to you as it is to a lot of other people. So I'm happy to do this. Let me get my, okay. So let me close this window over here. This is exciting. It's a new system and it's pretty exciting, but it's a big and powerful system. So there is a learning curve, which is why I'm happy to walk you guys through this. And I'm going to go through a few slides. I will admit that if you've seen any presentations on MFP before, there are going to be some repeats, but I think some of you haven't seen some of these, so I think it'll be good to give an overview. So Rose and Jim, who have watched this a few times, can probably chill out for the first couple slides. Like I said, the system's powerful, but with that power is a little bit of a learning curve, as Rose can attest to. So be patient and just continue to ask questions. Don't wait around. If there's something you need, feel free to call or email and ask me, and I could probably point you in the right direction. Like I said, the system is for you all too, to help you keep track of the projects. And so if there are things that don't meet your needs, we're happy to consider adding them. The developers have been really fantastic. It's a system that's used around the world, which I'll get into, but they have had to make tweaks for us because we are by far the largest operation, and we operate a little bit differently than they do. So we're continually, this is a work in progress. It's not what you see is what you get, and that's it. I think you guys all have activated accounts, and when we get into the demo, which is, I don't know, maybe 10 slides in, 8 slides in, you're welcome to follow along if you have 2 screens, one with me and one with your account. But if you don't have that, that's fine too. And if you have questions, I'm going to try to speak slowly, which is hard for me. But if you have questions or if you want me to slow down, I'm happy to. Please just barge in and let me know. There's not many of us here. Okay, so on to the next slide. So what is MFP? Marine Facilities Planning. So it's a joint program between NIOS, which is the Netherlands group, and NERC, which is the UK group, and MAS Software Engineering, MSE. And so initially NIOS and MSE worked together to create what was called Track and Trace back in 2011. And the goal of that one little module was to comply with customs warehouse regulations and equipment tracking. So NIOS was struggling to get the paperwork right for customs warehouse and keep track of all their instrumentation. So this application was developed to keep track, and then it could spit out reports that are necessary to meet customs. And then a light bulb went off in NIOS and said, wow, what else could we do? And so they got NERC on board, and the two of them together created what MFP is today, which is a modular multi-tenant system. That's a fancy word for modular integrated system to facilitate the cruise planning process. And so the cool thing about it is it's developed specifically for academic research cruise planning, right? It's not developed to plan for shipping companies or anything like that. And like I said, they've had to make modifications specifically for us because of the way we do business. One, we're so big. And two, the fact that we do cruise planning all together, and we have 14 different schedulers. And then once it comes to, we do scheduling all together. And then once it gets to cruise planning, it goes down to each of the institutions. And then at the end, the PCAR process is also kind of all together as a community. So, which is new. No other group works in that fashion. So this is just a timeline of MFP and the various users out there. We've got the Netherlands and the UK. We've got the Germans, the Australians, the Australian Antarctic program, the Saudi Arabians, the Danes, the Flemish, lots of Euros. And then we're all coming online here. Next. So this is a MFP works in what's called modules. So these little boxes here are all the modules within MFP. They're not all available to us yet. We're slowly rolling it out. The science portal, this is where the scientists go in and submit their application. And then further in the cruise planning process, this is where they're alerted to things that they need to do. So that's got all of their projects in it. Once a project's proposal is submitted, or an SME is what it's called now, it's no longer a ship time request. It's called a ship time and marine equipment request. So SME. So they submit an SME. This then it gets, the schedulers are alerted that this SME is submitted and the status of this SME, and it's available for schedule construction. And this is where the schedulers do all their magic. And this is where it's taken a lot of modifications to MFP to meet our needs, simply because we've got it's so big and there's so many of us. So once it's put on,
Alice, can I interrupt right here for just a second?
Mhm.
So for our purposes, we also get a copy coming into NSF when a PI submits it. And then that's the copy that you will see in the proposal. So,
Okay.
right, at that point, they can make a PDF of it.
Yes.
And
Yep.
that's what it's attached to the proposal.
Absolutely. Yep. There is an option to, and the last screen, I can show it to you, but there's an option for them to create a PDF that they can tag along with that. Okay. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. So the next one, once it's scheduled on a cruise, it goes into the project management phase. So this is the detailed cruise planning. And so we just had our first meeting about this today. The cruise planning is based on workflows, which we'll get into a little bit. In the future, we'll have equipment planning. So there's an inventory management module where everyone can keep track of all their instrumentation and also the calibrations and the when service is due and when it breaks down and all that sort of stuff. Super powerful module there. The technician and cruise scheduling, this isn't out yet either, but this is where the institutions can keep track of their personnel planning and then also personnel capabilities. It was brought up yesterday that there is actually, for your information, I think the UK is using one of these modules to keep track of vaccination statuses. So that's kind of on our radar also. All the information in all of this as cruise participants and the personnel planning is all protected to European standards, which are higher than the US standards. Next, we have the research planning module, which I'll touch on today, which is this super cool tool to help PIs or operators plan for their cruises. It's kind of like Google Maps, but more for cruise planning purposes. This is a module, I think, when we get it rolled out, which will be incredibly important to you all, which is the reporting module. And so I want to hear more about what you guys are going to want to get out of this system. So that'll be coming. And then for the operators, there is an online or an offline application. So the cool thing is that all of these modules are integrated, right? So the goal is that there's one location for all of the information, all the cruise planning information, all the request information, the equipment information, and there's no need to write emails over here and spreadsheets over there that don't necessarily meet and come together. So that's the goal. So as I mentioned, the system, I'm touching on this so to kind of give you an idea of what's the cruise planning process. So the cruise planning process is based on workflows. And so a workflow is simply a series of steps for a project to follow. And so we currently have two main workflows. The first one is the SME and scheduling workflow. So that basically has 4 steps in it, and the PI, they submit an SME, they confirm their funding, and then it gets put on a schedule. And once it gets put on a schedule, then it triggers the next workflow, which is the cruise planning workflow. I'm saying once it gets put on a published schedule, that's an important point. It triggers the next workflow, which is the cruise planning workflow, and those will be specific per institution. As part of that cruise planning workflow, we have the post-cruise workflow, which includes the PCAR. And I think we're going to include also the EEZ reporting stuff. So examples of a workflow, we have a lot of control within these workflows. So we can create alerts, we can create times, due dates and that sort of thing that alerts the PIs that hey, you need to go in here and do this by XYZ date. And the system does all this for us. So it's pretty powerful in that way. We can also create contingencies in there where, one step, the SME has to be submitted prior to it being able to be available to be put on a schedule, that sort of thing. Or a PI must complete their cruise questionnaire before they have a pre-cruise meeting, that sort of thing. So all of those sort of rules are set up through the workflow. So now I think we're going to just go to the app. Oops. All right, let me get in there.
Alice, before you go on, I got a couple of questions about a few things you said.
Go for it.
The first is, I heard you say they confirm their funding status. Now, is there no longer a requirement for us, you, to go in and change things from pending to funded?
Well, this has been an ongoing discussion. So, and it still is a discussion. There's concern, I guess back in the day, from what I understand, and someone can correct me, but back in the day, the PIs were supposed to confirm their funding status and they were not going in and doing that. And so it was taken over by NSF, I guess, for at least the NSF projects. And so my concern is that the PIs that are funded will update their status, but those who are not funded won't update their status. And so we'll have a whole bunch of pending projects in there. So we don't have a perfect solution at this point. It would be great to take it off of your all's plate and put it on their plate, but I'm up or open for discussion.
So when we had Rennie, that was one of her weekly tasks was to update, to go into our eJacket systems and make the updates only on things that were already notified to the PIs. Without Rennie, I simply don't have the bandwidth to do that every week. So, it's something I could do quarterly, but that's not as helpful. So I'm trying to encourage the PIs to do it, but there again, that hasn't proven to be the best way to keep these things up to date.
Rose, we've started now when we recommend a seagoing proposal for funding, we tell them to go in and update their SME.
Good, thank you.
And I think the last few that we've done that with have actually done it.
Mm-hmm.
But that
Yeah,
still doesn't do the declines.
Right. I think people are very enthusiastic to go in and hit the funded button, but not so enthusiastic to hit decline or withdraw. And so it keeps it in this kind of purgatory of always being pending, which is kind of a pain. And someday we will have another position in IPS that maybe can take that on, but right now,
maybe we could, Susie, maybe I'm going to put this up. Maybe we could have our science assistants
Yeah, I was just
go
gonna say,
in.
I'm gonna say
that would be awesome.
Rose,
If every section could be responsible for updating the award status, that's
That would be
great.
really great. Yeah,
Mhm.
that would be really great.
yeah.
So I have a question actually, now that we're here, I was going to ask it at the end, but with regards to funding. So Debbie, maybe I heard through maybe it was an email from Harm, but he mentioned that you were going to fund his project. I think it was Harm, so don't quote me on this. Going to fund his project if it could get on a ship in 2022. So
No, that isn't what I told him. I said we would recommend his proposal for funding, but we were holding it until he got on the ship schedule, assuming that it would probably be 2023. So we were pushing it out because we've run into a problem with funding. It's mostly on the Lang stuff because we've got environmental issues
Right. Right.
and this and all those kinds of things that we really have to sort out before it goes forward. So I didn't say if it could get on the 2022 budget
Okay.
So-
schedule.
I just wanted to make sure that if we changed it in MFP to funded, that we wouldn't have to change it back if he wasn't on the 2022 schedule or.
No, we're
Okay.
going to recommend it. Yes.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
Cynthia.
And
I
it wasn't
can't
just
remember.
him. Yeah, there was, yeah, I'm not sure if it was even him or there was a couple of them that came through that way. So, okay, so I just
Cynthia-
wanted to make
Cynthia
sure
has
that.
her hand up.
Sorry,
So
I-
I just have a question related to this issue of when a project is funded and who's responsible for confirming that in your system, because from an NSF perspective, a project isn't funded until the award is made, but then there's this period where we notify PIs of intent to recommend, and that's usually at that point is when I start talking to IPS right now in the old system to say, hey, we're going to support this, so they're aware. So first off, is a supported project one that we intend to recommend as opposed to one that's actually been supported? And secondly, it sounds to me from this last iteration that having that come from NSF makes much more sense than asking the PIs to do it, because then there's this game of telephone. Anyway.
So Cynthia, I think you bring up a good point, but for scheduling purposes, sometimes the lag is so long to actually go into the funded status that it makes sense to, I mean, maybe we,
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to clarify what, because to me,
No.
it makes sense when we intend to fund, but they're still in this lag.
right. So maybe that's the definition, intend to fund. And I think the system is powerful enough to add notes into it so that we could clarify NSF recommends this for funding or will recommend it for funding, and that the year is still to be determined, because a lot of times what I fear is that giving the PI all the power to update this, they'll just put in whatever they think is in, what they want versus what was really discussed in the proposal, because obviously no one has access to the proposal. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, I just, sorry, Mike, I can see where the confusion comes from in what we've been telling them, because they're saying if they get on the 2022 budget, then we will move forward and recommend them.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
otherwise they're on hold until they get on the schedule. So I can see how that might be confusing for the PIs. So this
Okay.
alternative solution is probably best. Sorry, Mike, over to you.
Well, it sounds like we might have three categories or four. Intend to fund, intend not to fund, funded and not funded. So that's four categories. And that there, some will be in a limbo of intend to fund or intend to decline. We're in a situation now, our program, where we're pulling back proposals that PIs have been notified for declines and changing them to awards. So
Oh, wow.
things like this do happen in that, from that interim position to the final decision. Now, I don't think any of ours, well, I don't know how it'll affect ship time. But I also agree with Rose that it's something that probably NSF should be handling. And this might be something where the software could help us with producing lists of proposals and their status that we could easily see where they're at and easily update them.
Okay, we can
So
get to
I don't
that.
know how the system works yet because we haven't seen it yet, but a module like that to help us see the status. And then once a proposal is in the declined mode, I assume it exits the system. Right? At that point, their ship time request goes away, or
Not as it stands right now,
Okay.
but it is noted as declined. And when we go into the system, I'll show you, we can sort on all that. So you can just sort them out kind of thing.
Yeah.
So thanks. I thought that might be a yes or no question 15 minutes ago when I asked it. I'm sorry to distract, but I'll just throw in one little other piece of context for awareness. Back in the day, I think it predates everyone here, except maybe Mike, I don't know. We had a program officer inform 5 different projects that they were funded and going to see. And that recommendation did not go through. None of those projects were funded. And havoc ensued, and an infamous email from NSF was distributed about ship time. So that's context for the question I asked. Thanks.
So are we saying that we need to have this intent to fund and intent to decline? Right now, I think the options are funded, pending, and withdrawn. So do we have a consensus that we need these extra?
I think we need at least one of them. So, or we can make it ambiguous where it's been reviewed. So,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
Pending is not ambiguous enough?
Well, it doesn't tell you it's been reviewed.
So the
Because
hard part,
pension-
Jim, is I think if something says it's intended to be funded, the schedulers are more likely to say, oh, well, I better get on this, right? Kind of thing, as opposed to a pending, which could be anywhere from, so.
But like MG&G, often they won't fund something until it's on a schedule. And
Yeah, so that's why we need to let the operators know that we're waiting for it to get on the schedule.
so intend to fund is
Yes.
would serve that purpose
Yes.
with
that
no
would-
obligation. I mean, read the small print. There's no obligation to actually fund if we don't have money.
Okay, and I think intent to decline is close enough to pending that we're okay with leaving, like keeping that one out. Does that sound right? So intent to fund, funded, withdrawn and declined. Okay. Okay, well, that could be good. Okay.
Cynthia had something.
All right, so the other part of all of this conversation that would be good at some point to clarify is who it is that is communicating this. Because it's still not 100% clear to me
Oh, that would be.
how you're supposed to get accurate information. And I don't know if that's a today discussion or not. And,
Who is communicating to the system or who is communicating to the PI?
to the system.
To the system, did we just say the science program manager assistants would do that?
It was put out there.
Okay.
And if that's the way it's going to be, then I think that, making sure that we don't have all of the programs here. I guess Susanna, no, we don't have all the programs here. So.
Okay, well, we will put that as an action item, science program managers, PM assistants update. I think that makes
I would
sense.
propose that,
That's more of our action item, I think.
Okay.
And then
Well,
once we decide who has authority, you have to grant authority to individuals to change the system. So,
right, okay.
It sounds to me, Alice, like this is just really a more reporting function, hopefully in the system that we can do. I don't know we haven't gotten to that phase yet with Baco.
Oh, they can, yeah, okay. Well, they can get the list of projects through the project management module too. You can export things from there.
Right,
So,
I know, yeah.
yeah. So,
Alice, the extension of this topic is pretty specific to me, but everyone here is impacted. Are we going to get to the part where the NDSF vehicles are treated as equipment and not ships? And then how one would deal with the pending funded status for projects that don't require ARF ship time, like for Sentry off Falcor, for example?
yes, we're not there yet, but they
Okay.
are considered, currently in the system, they're considered equipment and not, so assets as opposed to vessels. And there's a learning curve there too, because they need to get into inventory management, yada, yada, yada. So the way this is dealt with, Brian, at other institutions or other organizations out there is that they have a special workflow that's specifically for only to request equipment. So it could be for the vehicles, it could be for the mock nest that needs to go to Falcor or wherever else or anything like that. And then those vehicle operators are notified when that happens. So that's coming. It's a new workflow. Right now, we are at the point where they are assets in the system, but we don't have the specific equipment workflow yet.
Okay.
So if we have a half an hour left,
Okay,
why
get
we've
moving.
only made it through, I think, 2 slides.
Okay, we're gonna get moving
So why
here.
don't we let Alice go through it all and then,
We can
so you
talk.
guys can see the system, because you haven't really seen the system yet.
Correct. Okay, let me share my screen. Let me get here. Share. Okay. You can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, oh, let's refresh. See, that's the beauty. Oh, I didn't want that one. Hold on. Apologies. Bear with me. Got several accounts that do different things. Okay, so we're going to run through the various modules that you should have available to you at this point. One of the things I want to point out is this button on the upper right corner to the left of your name. It looks like building blocks, but what that is, if you click that, you can see the modules that are available to you. Okay. We're going to start with the schedule module. And so that's what we're in right now. You can see across the top here, you can choose what shifts you want to see on your map or what schedules you want to see. You can choose various views here, okay? We'll look at our map first. This is our lovely map of the vessels in the fleet. I'm not sure if I've chosen everyone. That's why some might not show up. These location data comes from AIS. Some cool features here are there are some layers. So there's a bathymetry layer that's taken from GEVCO. You can see the marine protected areas. You can see the EEZs. In the research planning, you can actually also see the NOAA mapping holes. You can see other vessels here, and you can also see ship tracks, which take a little bit to load here, but they'll come. So eventually, this is where we will see all of our ship schedules, all right, the public schedules, and they will be across the top here, and then the map will be down here. This is the European system, just to give you an example of what this can do. And so again, the schedules, oops, see there. The schedules are across the top. You can choose the ship. Some neat things here is that they shows you the current cruises that are going on. So if you click on a cruise, you can see all the information, both the application information, which is your SME, what they've initially requested, and then the final supply agreement, which is basically cruise plan that they plan to do. You can download it from here. You can see the equipment. If you click on a project, from here on the schedule, you can say, again, you can get all the information about the project. So this is coming for us once we get our schedules in 2022 schedules published on our system. Another cool thing here is that you can filter on equipment. So if I want to see all of the cruises that are using, I don't know, samplers and profilers, all of these are highlighted and they are using samplers and profilers. So there's some cool features to it. Right now, we only have our map, but coming this fall, we'll start seeing our 2022 schedules up here. All right. Next. So the next module I want to go through is the project management module, which I think is going to be the most important to you for tracking projects. So this is a list of all of the workflows in the system. So it's both the SME applications, but right now it's only SME applications because we haven't gotten to cruise planning. But once we get to cruise planning, you'll also be able to see all of the cruise planning information in here. So you can search on workflow. Like I said, right now we only have the SME in there. And then you can either search on a project's name, you can search on a PI, Picard, I'm making this up now. And so you can see all the projects with that PI, or we can say, really, all I want is to see the funded cruises from NSF Geo. Oh, not Geo, you're OPP or OCE, excuse me, OCE. So, and you can even drill down from there within OCE. You can say, I only want to see the MG&G projects or the biology projects. So that's where you can get your list. This planning status here shows you the draft schedules or the schedule that the project is on. So this project right here, S mode, is on the Sally Ride SR22. And once the schedule gets published, it actually says published and then the schedule name. Cruise location is there. Let's say I only want to see those that are using JSON. So I type that in and then we can see all the JSON projects, status is active. And then, I think it was Mike who asked the question about whether it would go away. We would probably, once it was declined, we change the status from active to inactive or rejected or something like that. Rejected sounds terrible, doesn't it? We can change that verbiage. So if you, once
Alice,
you get your,
real quickly,
go for it.
real quickly, right now on the descriptor, you've got identifier, SME application, which doesn't add a lot of value. And then the name of the project, is the PI name available somewhere? We often, I think
This
there it
is
is, never mind. Gotcha, thank
Initiator
you.
is the PI name, yeah. The initiator is a term that came from the others. It's who initiated the SME. So it's generally the PI. So you can export all this using this button here, and it exports as either a CSV or an Excel document here. So that should give you a precursor report at least. But if you try that and it's not what you need, I would love to hear about it because I'd like to know how it can help you more. Okay. So once you're in here, if you click on a project, let's find this one. This brings up what's their workflow. Okay, so here are the roles for that workflow. Right now, it's Roxanne Beinart is the scientist, the PI actually, and then you can see the complete cruise request form. This is completed, it's submitted, and you can view that form by clicking view. And this shows you her complete SME, her complete request. Okay. So let's go back. And I think we're good with project management. So I encourage you to look around in there and try the export and see if you can get what you need to get. And if you have questions while you're doing it, give me a call. All right. We got that one. Let's go to back up to our little button up here, and we're going to do the science portal. So the science portal is where, this is an overview to help you guys know what the scientists are seeing, but this is where the scientists go in and they complete their ship time or their SME, their request forms. And then they also are told in this window what else they need to do. So in terms of this one, it's already been submitted, but they need to confirm their application funding. I'll show you another example here. Oh, maybe I won't.
Does confirm application funding, is that the current terminology for they told me my cruise is going to get funded?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So in this case here, this this SME has already been scheduled. And so now the PI is alerted that, hey, we need to add some cruise participants. I need to complete this edit. They need to edit their draft supply agreement. That's their cruise plan essentially. And they have to complete their berthing plan. And so if they click on any of these steps, it takes them where they need to go. Just so you have a look, we have the ship time request form. Let me actually find one over here that I've already completed. View. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth here. This is the ship time, the SME, and it's based on the old ship time request form. And it's that balance between asking enough questions where we can schedule the project properly, but not asking too many questions where it's super duper onerous. So we've had this form open and we have been collecting SMEs from the PIs for 2022, 23 and beyond. And we haven't had a lot of questions, which is always nice, but we are going to have a webinar for on June 30th for the PIs just to help them get into the system and explain it all a little bit and go through the form. So the form, you can see there's project contacts. These are the various sections, and it covers just about the same questions that were on the STR. Some important things to keep in mind. This system is set up where each cruise must have their own SME. And for the most part, this isn't a big deal, but I could see where the PIs from like the BATS program or the HOTS program might get a little steamy about having to submit so many. So that's in the back of my head, but I haven't created a big solution for that yet. There is a duplicate button, but it still is a process of going in and changing the names. I did it for the BATS program this year, and it took me about an hour and a half to get all of them in there, which isn't too big of a deal, but it's a discussion I'm sure we're going to have. Another thing to note about the SME as it's set up right now is that when an SME is submitted, it's locked and the PI can't go back in there. And the point of that was try to get a handle on updates, random updates. But there's people on both sides of the fence on that one too. So we're trying it. You can unlock it. We have people who have the power can unlock it. And we're going to see how this works. Okay.
Alice, is
Yes.
actual scheduling limited to details that are in the SME? So if somebody does extend their cruise by a few days, how would that be accommodated if their SME doesn't reflect the actual?
So if the PI chooses to extend their cruise by a few days, or if the NSF chooses to extend their
If the cruise is extended, I mean, is there a way that the schedule can reflect something other than what's in the SME or not?
Yes.
Yes.
The schedulers have power to do that. But we need to be able to make sure that those notes are somewhere. NSF and or so-and-so increase this cruise by X number of days. But yes, the schedulers have the power to increase it. Okay. Next, we're going to run through. You're welcome to go in here and play around with this form if you want to see what they have to go through. It's pretty straightforward. The next module we want to just touch on is the schedule construction module. And this is the most, there's a lot to the schedule construction module. So I'm going to point you, you guys should all have access to draft schedules. And the best way to see the draft schedules is through this button up here, you see, and you want to choose review. It's the review mode. Other features here, schedule just shows the schedule, the draft schedule that's available, and the vessel is, actually, let's go to this system, sorry. Got a test and a live going. Okay, this is actually the live system now. So things to note on this screen, this is called the grid. This is the view that you're in. So this is the grid timeline view. This is the draft schedule that's up there that you're viewing. this is the ship whose schedule, so this ship here matches over here, right? This is an interesting button, which is equipment, which we'll get to in a second. But I would recommend, if you want to see draft schedules, to go to the review mode. So on the review mode, you can click this plus button, and I want to see the Thompsons, and I'm going to see this GoFar B. And then actually I want to compare that to the Thompson, I don't know, OFAR, this one, D. And you can compare these as you go. Or if in the project management, you see that one of your projects is on schedule XYZ, on the Thompson, you can go in here and find that schedule and see where that project is scheduled. Does that make sense? So there's dots here, these dots, yellow is Century, red is Alvin, obviously it's not on here, blue is Jason, and green is OBSIC, are our dots right now.
So Alice, one thing
Mhm.
that I do find a little confusing for me when I'm looking at things is that the name across there, I can't see it on my screen, but when I've been playing with it, it's the project name and not the PI.
Yes. Okay,
And to me, my brain only works in that I look for the PI. I don't necessarily refer to all projects by their project name.
right. And so that's a good call, Rose. And one of the things, so I just so you guys know what I just did, there are these buttons underneath the ship. And if you click them, you get a little more information each time. This one simply shows the ports, and then this one shows more information. And we asked, one of the updates we asked was that the PI name gets put into this box. Would that be useful, or would you rather you want it up there?
I personally like it up there because, you know, visually I can see one, the PI's got a conflict in that, you know, multiple cruises that are funded, and obviously, I mean, we get that anyway, but that would help in that. And it's just the way, there's just so many names, and you know, we fund so much, it's hard to keep track of what PI is. Like, I'm not going to remember Blake Plateau belongs to, well, I know in this case it belongs to Van Amedoc, but I have to remember so many of those
Right,
connected details. It can get confusing.
okay.
Better not forget.
A related question, in terms of the list we saw of the SMEs, I remembered, I didn't see any tie there to a specific proposal. So it had and we go a lot by proposal numbers also. Is that in there?
It is actually, it's in the funding section of the SME. I can show you that. Project management. Let's see. Let's do this one. View. So here is the PDF of the form essentially. And if you scroll down, I'm trying not to make you all sick. There's a funding source here, and it has the NSF number, although that doesn't look right. I think this is our test.
So
This is our
it
test system.
doesn't.
Well, this is our
because-
test system, so I think we are just making things up right now.
Yeah, well, so they can't have I don't think they would have their proposal number at the time of creating the SME. Because they
Right.
won't have their proposal number until after they have attached the PDF to a thing and submitted it. And so then if they can't actually go back and edit the SME, it would never have the award number on it.
So the beauty is, I believe we can update it here. Yeah,
Look at that.
and then they can update their status if we choose to go that way.
That's
Right, and that's the way it is right now in the STR system, Eddie, is that, yeah,
Yep.
they don't. So oftentimes when we would be updating the funding status, we would also be inserting the OCE number. So it is a laborious task. It'd be nice to share.
Okay.
Alice,
that's
would a
good.
stopgap solution to
problem.
the project naming be to encourage PIs to use a naming convention that said put your name in it, like white for the hot cruises and Oman for whatever. I know it's not elegant, but seems like it would serve the purpose.
Yes, potentially. It's just sometimes, Brian, hard to get that word out. And so it would be great if the system could just do it for us and we wouldn't have to rely on them. But I agree, we can start trying that. And maybe I'll encourage that as at the webinar with the PIs. Thanks. One other, let's go back to schedule construction. Brian's a view that might be useful to you. So we'll go back to this grid timeline. And there's this button here. And if you click that button, it's called the equipment timeline. And what this does is it shows you all the draft schedules. Right now, we only have these 3 pieces of equipment in there, Alvin, Jason, and Century, and it can show you where there are conflicts. So right now, I know the schedulers have been working to deconflict a lot of these, but let's see here where we've got Jason is on some drafts for this island-like shipwrecks and also on this Escanaba drafts. So there's a conflict there. And there's a conflict here also. It looks a little confusing, but you can see this is the SME. And if you mouse over it, you can see the schedule and then the ship. And each of these dots is a different ship. Each dot color is a different ship. So this is green and it's the Kilo Moana. And this gives a little details about where that is scheduled on that draft schedule.
Yeah,
Okay.
that view gives me great anxiety, but I understand it exists.
Right. Does it
Believe me,
really?
the schedulers have had that anxiety for a long time.
Yeah, they're still working through the anxiety to try to get through it all. All right, so we'll go back. If you want to use this view, I would recommend going into the review mode. I don't want to go too deep into this grid timeline. Down here are the applications that could go onto this cruise, but for you guys, I would recommend just going into the review mode and reviewing schedules that way. There is one other mode, which is the scheduler mode, which is an Excel version kind of thing. And I know some schedulers like to schedule this way, but just another way to look at the schedule. Okay, the last module I want to go through, and we're almost out of time, so is this research planner module. I don't think this will be all that useful to you, but for you guys to know that it's out there. This is where the PIs can go in or even the operators can go in and plan cruises, and it just gives them some tools to do that. So you can choose a port. We're going to go in and out of San Diego, and we're going to sample here, and we're going to sample here. You can also upload samples you can also upload sample locations if you choose to. You can add research areas. And the system, whoopsie, there we go. And the system will take all those into consideration. And then you can add more layers too. You can add, I thought it was in here, national data sets, general. I'll have to look it up. I thought the NOAA data set was is in this, oh yeah, it was in this view, but it doesn't seem to be. So I'm not sure what's wrong there. But the NOAA Bathy gap analysis is also a layer, can be a layer in the system. So one thing that's neat about this is you can change the ship speed. Just about everything is editable. You can change the ship speed. If they want to stay on this station for 3 days, they can do that. And all this obviously rolls up to affect their total time. So that helps them to understand how much time they need. Another neat thing about this application is that it'll show you immediately that you're in somebody else's EZ. So here is the Mexican exclusive economic zone. It also will tell you with this exclamation point if you're in a marine protected area. So there's this module here, and there's also a version of this as part of the request, the ship time request or the SME. And there's also that will get revisited in the cruise planning process. So the thought is maybe in the SME, they'll have just basic information about where they're going to work, not necessarily every single station location or anything like that. But then when it gets revisited in the cruise planning, then more station location information can go in there and as part of the cruise planning process.
This is helpful for the schedulers because they can go in and validate the number of transit days and the number of science days all make sense. It's submitted within the SME.
So I was just gonna tell everyone that the data that they're pulling for the EEZs is actually was developed in the Netherlands, and it's what the State Department recommends that we use. So it's pretty accurate. The other thing is that there's these great layers like the Argo floats and other tracks that one, it's on the homepage. When you look at the map and you want to see where the ships are, you can layer also to see where the floats are. What does Ghost Ship do?
I don't know.
So
Oh, it's the Ghost Ship lines.
lines.
Probably
ship
does the
line.
lines.
All the
Yeah.
Ghost Ship lines there. See that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
So-
someone might be like, oh, I'm gonna cross over, you know, I could compare my data to whatever.
Right, right. So this, it's just so powerful. So thank you, Alice, for listening to all our needs, and it's great.
Before we
Hey,
bail,
go
can I
ahead.
hijack the last question?
Um,
So back to scheduling, is there a way to look at versioning? I ask because one of the things we do here at NSF, or I do, is look at, you know, what was previously scheduled and, you know, essentially funded in terms of operations versus what actually happened. A lot of the questions I have to go back to original schedule versions. How many days did we have? How many days did we do? Who dropped off the schedule? Was it NSF days or other agency days? Is there a way to look at previous versions of schedules in the system?
Not that I know of, but I'm sure there is a way to track changes. So
There is.
I
Yeah.
do
That's
that
a
right now,
question.
Brian. And you can't do that in the STR system now.
yeah, but we can. There is a change log that, but I'm just not sure how far it reaches, right? Because we've been asking about that for the SME also. But I can add that change log info for schedules. I will ask Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, that's about all I have. I had one other slide, but I think it was just more about if you guys have questions, please reach out. So again, it's things to come. So we are rolling out the cruise planning section. We just had a meeting yesterday with Woods Hole, Scripps, and UW, and they are going to review what we have so far and start just giving it first set of eyes, you know, just like we did with the schedule construction module. And then the reporting functions, those are yet to come too. And I know those are super important to you guys. And I'm really excited about how, I mean, the system, as Rose said, is so powerful that we're going to be able to pull whatever data is in there, we can make a report out of it. So if there are certain reports that you guys need to see, please let me know, you know, beyond, you know, your list of projects kind of thing. Or if you need to see it in a fancy way. We're also working on, there's a crew planning and tracking module, which we haven't really gotten to, and then inventory management. And so with inventory management, I have been working with R2R, RCRV, and the Coriolis group, and we're actually working with the NERC BODC on controlled vocabularies, and phew, anyway. So we're hoping that the RCRVs will all be delivered with their inventories all loaded into this system, which will be great because it'll be a, you know, kind of prompt a good 3 ships that'll be using the system. And then I had the question about funding. And yeah, I just want to hear feedback from you guys. So I don't want, you know, if it doesn't work or if you can't figure something out, let me know. Or if you need to see something, because the developers, like I said, have been super impressed with how can-do they are, for one, and then just how they come up with elegant solutions. So they're really top-notch. So, oh, Jim Halleck has raised his hand. Go for it, Jim.
Yeah, one of the things everybody's asking recently is bandwidth. Or is there going to be a way in there that they can request expanded bandwidth? First of all, to explain what they have by default, and then say if that enough, et cetera.
Right, and so as part of the cruise questionnaire, or what we'll call it, there is a section on bandwidth. But if we feel it's important enough, we can pull that out and make its own step in the workflow. And I talked to John Meyer about potentially doing that. So if it were a step in the workflow, we could assign it to the High Seas Net group that they have to check the box that says, yes, I don't know, we've reviewed this or whatever. And so it's a matter of how, and we can work with High Seas Net and the operators to figure out how we want to deal with that. So the question is in there now. It's probably not as powerful as it could be, but if we feel like we need to give it more power, we can pull it out and make it its own step. And I think that would be more relevant, Jim, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but for the globals and the ocean and the RCRVs as opposed to the local ships. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I just wanted to say one other thing is that previously ONR had asked that their ship schedules be password protected. They didn't want the public looking at it, but now that has gone away. So there is a version that the public can get to, right, Alice, that won't require passwords, that you can actually see a schedule. And so sometimes that might be just, what you're looking for as far as.
So here we go. Let me share my screen one more time. This is the NERC system, the Euro system, and there's it comes up right away to see the schedules. So you just go to the website and that's what comes up. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that will be what we have, or? Yeah.
Yes, yep. Okay, any other questions?
Who's paying these people to develop this?
We are.
Who are?
No, who? You?
Yeah, we're paying the majority of it. ONR is paying some of it. So I want a bigger sticker that has a big NSF sticker on it, not a little
Okay.
tiny dot.
Okay, big
It should be
NSF logo.
proportionate to how I'm
Oh
teasing.
my gosh,
but-
that would be hysterical.
Oh, Bohm would be this little tiny drop, but they're the biggest one on the front page. Sorry.
Well, they compensate
biggest
for
one?
themselves with a big logo.
Yeah, exactly.
See, NSF should have thought more. Is it?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yours is, so it's kind of interesting because it's probably the same height as the others, but here I'm sharing my screen again,
It's so tiny.
but it's kind of small.
So,
So
Okay,
maybe we could revamp it and put NSF somewhere else and the rest of them at the bottom.
It's the first
Perfect.
one. It's fine.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's not. It's like ONR has a big old flag too. We have a tiny little flag. But anyway,
We could probably ask.
It
them to
doesn't
pump it up
matter.
a little
No.
bit.
What it is, it's a flaw in our logo design because
kinda
it is
think so.
on our logo
it's
design.
the people or whatever, or the corona. They define the pixel, the height of the thing, and yet your eye sees the size of the logo as just the size of the globe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
exactly.
see the one that starts on the left. That's the first one you see. That's the important one.
Anyway, it
Well, we
is
can put you in the
awesome.
center if you want to be in the center.
We want to be the center of the universe. So this, let me just tell you real quick that for years we've been envious of the European system, and Bob and I would go to these meetings and they'd show it off. And so we finally just decided we are going to fund this, and ONR also agreed. So it's a big change, but we'll be where they are, and it's awesome. So I'm so excited that the UNOLS office is taking on this project.
For your information,
Thank you,
NOAA's
everyone.
talking to them now about the possibility for the NOAA system, and then we could be in there kind of in parallel together. We hopefully eventually communicate together if NOAA opts to pay them to develop the NOAA version of it.
Right. Oh,
They're
and
all-
notice NASA isn't on the list.
Yeah, the NOAA actually should be even easier, should be way easier to develop than ours because they're primarily funded by one organization and their one organization is doing all the scheduling. So it could be a lot simpler for them. Also, the NSF LOF, the aircraft LAOF, one of those, they're also talking to them too. So the Boulder group is talking to MFP, and that would be the first time they've been used with
And
it.
USAP?
No, well, no, not really.
No, no,
Sort of.
it's,
How about
uh,
that? So we're putting this.
Yeah, AGS, I think, or I forget where she's from, but anyway, Alice has been talking to her and they love the whole idea and concept and they want to be like UNOS.
And then NASA will want to put all their satellites in it.
Not until they pay. They need to pay up.
Ooh. Okay, that's all I have. I don't want to take a lot of your time or more of your time, but I encourage you to go in there and I encourage if you're scratching your head a little, just give me a call and I'm sure I can, I see that, Jim, you're scratching your head. Give me a call. We can, I can answer your questions quickly as opposed to making it difficult. So, and if I would love to hear if you just off the top of your head know of a report that you need every year for something or another that you think the information is in here, let me know and we can work on that too. So put it on the list.
Yeah, one of the things that would be super helpful is sometimes I like to see which section in OCE is using the most ship time and the cost. That's something that a report that we've used in the past. Hint, MG&G usually wins.
By a lot.
I've been curious about the berthing capacity of cruises. So after the fact, how many empty berths are we paying for or are available or potentially available on ships?
Oh.
I don't know if that's something would be easy or hard to track.
I think it would be pretty easy. I mean, again, the data is in there, right? So we have.
And R2R, we get submitted to R2R, right?
Well,
Yeah.
that's a cool thing too. We're gonna actually, the cruise participant list in MFP eventually is going to be, R2R is going to harvest that data. So the operators no longer have to fill out that silly form. It's gonna, be one location, which is great. And yeah, we're gonna have integration between Coriolis and MFP, the inventory management system, and also R2R and MFP inventory management. So we're working on all that, but it's coming slowly. So.
And eventually maybe the pools, et cetera.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, having all the pools in there is going to be great too. And that too is neat where, the van pool can say, I'm going to assign this van to this cruise over here. And so when the cruise schedule changes, that asset schedule changes, it's all integrated, which is pretty neat.
That's pretty cool, but I can guarantee you, if I was trying to get in there right now and do what you were just doing, hopping around like crazy, I'd be lost, scratching my head off it, but I will practice.
You got my number. Call me. We can work
got
it out. All right, take care, you guys.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you. Thank you,
Thank
Alice.
you.
Bye.
Thanks again, Alice.
Alice, Doug, do you have
Thank
5
you.
minutes to call me?
Yeah. Do you want to
yeah.
just stay on here?
Maybe.